Hey everyone. So I gotta say, when I first started digging into this whole thing about Nigerian roads, I had no clue how much was going on. Like, it's way more than just potholes and bad pavement.
It's true.
It's like a whole other level.
Yeah. It's fascinating how much goes into building a road that can actually, withstand the forces of nature and all the different challenges that a country like Nigeria faces.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be diving into today, the whole issue of embankments and slope failures on Nigerian roads.
Right. It's a really important topic because these failures can have a huge impact on people's lives and the economy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, maybe you could give us a quick overview of what exactly we mean by embankments and why they're so important.
Sure. So basically, embankments are those raised sections of road that you often see, like when a highway is cutting through a valley or a hilly area. They're built up from the ground level to create a level surface for the road.
Okay, so they're like the foundation for a
Hmm.
lot of roads, especially in areas with challenging terrain.
Right. And in a country like Nigeria, with its diverse landscape, from rainforests to mountains to coastal plains, embankments are absolutely crucial for connecting different regions.
It's like trying to build a road on a giant puzzle board.
Haha.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. You have to consider all the different pieces and how they fit together. And that's where things can get tricky because those different pieces come with their own set of challenges when it comes to building stable embankments.
So it's not just one size fits all.
Nope, not at all. You have to take into account the specific soil conditions, the climate, the topography, all sorts of factors.
So before we get into why these embankments sometimes fail, maybe we should back up a bit and talk about this concept of slope stability.
Yeah, good point. Because ultimately, that's what we're talking about when we talk about embankments and failures. It's all about how stable that slope of Earth is.
Right, because an embankment is essentially a man-made slope, right?
Exactly. And whether it's a natural slope or a man made one, the same principles apply. It's all about the forces that are trying to make that slope move versus the forces that are trying to keep it in place.
Okay, so it's like a constant tug of war.
Exactly. And the key to stability is making sure that the forces holding the slope together are stronger than the forces trying to pull it apart.
So what are some of the things that can make a slope more prone to failure?
Well, gravity is always a factor.
Of course.
Everything wants to slide downhill. But on top of that, you have things like the type of soil, the amount of water in the soil, the steepness of the slope, and even things like vegetation or lack thereof.
It sounds like a pretty complex equation.
It can be, but
Yeah.
that's why it's so important for engineers to understand all these factors and how they interact when they're designing and building roads.
Right. Because if they get it wrong, the consequences can be pretty serious.
Yeah, we're not just talking about a few cracks in the pavement here. We're talking about potential landslides, road closures, and in some cases, even loss of life.
So the stakes are pretty high.
Definitely. And that's why this whole issue of embankment and slope failures is something that we need to take seriously, especially in a country like Nigeria, where the landscape is so diverse and the challenges are so unique.
And where the need for reliable transportation infrastructure is so critical.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about what embankments are and the concept of slope stability. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of why these failures happen so often in Nigeria. What are some of the specific factors that make this such a challenging problem?
Well, one of the biggest factors is the climate. Nigeria has two distinct climate zones. The south is tropical with heavy rainfall, while the north is drier and hotter. And that rainfall in the south can really wreak havoc on slopes.
Oh, so?
Well, when water seeps into the soil, it increases the weight of the soil and it also reduces the friction between the soil particles, which makes it more likely to slide.
So it's like the water's acting like a lubricant.
Exactly. And when you combine that with the fact that a lot of the soil in the south is also quite clayey, which means it absorbs a lot of water, you've got a recipe for potential slip failure.
And then in the north, I imagine the dry conditions create their own set of problems.
They do, because while you don't have as much water to worry about in the north, the dry conditions can lead to soil erosion, which can also weaken slopes.
So it's almost like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Kind of. You've got different challenges in different parts of the country.
And on top of the climate, you've also got the challenge of Nigeria's diverse topography.
Right, exactly. You've got everything from steep mountains to rolling hills to flat plains, and each of these different landforms presents its own unique set of challenges when it comes to building stable roads.
So it's not just about dealing with the climate, it's also about understanding the lay of the land.
Absolutely. And sometimes those two factors can combine in really tricky ways. For example, in areas with steep slopes and heavy rainfall, you've got a double whammy effect that can make slope failures even more likely.
So it's like a perfect storm of factors.
Yeah, you could say that. And then on top of all of that, you have the human factor to consider.
What do you mean?
Well, sometimes human activities can actually exacerbate the problem of slope failures.
Like what?
Well, for example, deforestation can be a big problem. When trees are removed, the soil is no longer held in place by their roots, and that makes it more susceptible to erosion. And then you have things like poor construction practices, which can also lead to slope failures.
So it's not just about nature doing its thing. Sometimes we humans are making things worse.
Sadly, that's often the case. But the good news is that we can also be part of the solution.
Well, that's a good segue because I definitely want to talk about solutions. But before we do that, I think we need to really understand the consequences of these embankment and slope failures. It's not just about inconvenience, right? These failures can have a real impact on people's lives and livelihood.
These failures can have ripple effects, that spread throughout communities and impacting everything from their economy to their daily lives.
So let's talk about that. Like, when an embankment collapses, what are the economic impacts?
Well, just imagine a major road being shut down because an embankment gave way. Suddenly you have the transportation of goods and people grinding to a halt, businesses are losing money, commutes turn into nightmares, and it just disrupts the entire flow of commerce. It's like cutting off a vital artery in the economy.
Yeah, it's not just about fixing the road itself. It's also about the lost productivity and economic activity that, kind of spreads outward.
Exactly. And those costs can be really significant, especially in a developing country like Nigeria, where infrastructure is already, stretched thin. Every delay, every detour, it all translates to wasted time, lost money, and missed opportunities.
And then there's the social impact, too.
Yeah,
I imagine these failures can really disrupt the lives of everyday people.
absolutely. Think about it. You have communities that are cut off from essential services like healthcare and education just because a road is impassable. People can't reach hospitals, kids can't go to school, access to things like markets and jobs is severely limited. It's a huge blow to the social fabric of those communities.
It's almost hard to fathom the human cost of these failures. It's a powerful reminder that infrastructure isn't just about concrete and steel. It's about connecting people to the things they need to thrive.
You've hit the nail on the head. And in a country as large and diverse as Nigeria, with its reliance on a strong road network, these failures can have a disproportionate impact on the most vulnerable populations.
We've painted a pretty stark picture so far, but I have to believe there are solutions out there. What are some of the ways that engineers and communities are fighting back against these embankment and slope failures?
Yeah, well, the good news is that there are solutions. And they generally fall into two categories. You have slope protection methods and then just good old-fashioned routine maintenance.
Okay, so let's start with slope protection.
Yeah.
What kind of techniques are they using to reinforce these vulnerable slopes?
Well, one approach is to provide what we call rigid surface protection. It's almost like giving the slope a suit of armor, you know? Think of things like applying a layer of cement or even using shotcrete, which is a kind of sprayed concrete. These methods create a durable barrier against erosion, and they keep that water from seeping in and weakening
So
the
it's like
soil.
building a shield around the slope to protect it from the elements.
Exactly. And then you have retaining walls. These act like giant buttresses, holding back the earth and providing support to the slope. There are a few different types, like cantilever gravity and earth-reinforced walls, and each one is designed based on the specific soil properties and the angle of
So
the
it's a very
slope.
carefully calculated balancing act between the forces of nature and the ingenuity of engineering. I'm curious about those vegetative methods you mentioned before. How do plants help with slope protection?
Ah, yes, nature's own defense system. So grass, shrubs, and trees, they're more than just landscaping. Their roots act like a natural net, binding the soil together and preventing erosion. It's like weaving a living tapestry to hold that slope in
So it's not
place.
just about building hard structures, it's about harnessing the power of nature to help stabilize these slopes.
Exactly. And the bonus is that vegetative methods also make the roadside more visually appealing. It's a win-win
I love that.
situation.
It's like combining engineering with environmental responsibility.
Mm.
But let's not forget about routine maintenance. It might not be as flashy as building retaining walls or planting trees, but it seems pretty crucial for stopping small problems from snowballing into major disasters.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Routine maintenance is often overlooked, but it's absolutely essential for slope stability. Simple things like keeping drainage channels clear, repairing cracks in those protective surfaces, and removing overgrown vegetation can go a long way in preventing
It's
major
like saying an
failures.
ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. And perhaps the most important part of routine maintenance is regular inspections. Trained professionals can spot early signs of instability like small cracks, bulges, or water seepage. This allows them to step in before a small problem turns into a catastrophic
So it's about
failure.
being proactive, not reactive, and keeping a close eye on the health of these slopes. It sounds like it takes a combination of smart engineering, environmental awareness, and just plain old diligence to tackle this challenge. But with all these solutions available, why do embankment and slope failures continue to be such a persistent problem in Nigeria?
That's a great question. And it highlights the complex reality of infrastructure development in a developing country.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a mix of factors. Limited resources, the pressures of rapid development, and sometimes a lack of commitment to best practices. It all contributes to why these failures
So
keep
it's not just
happening.
about having the knowledge and the tools, it's about having the resources and the will to actually use them effectively.
Exactly. And then we can't forget about, the elephant in the room, climate change. As weather patterns become less predictable, with heavier rainfall and longer droughts, those slopes face even more stress. It's a challenge that demands long-term thinking and solutions that can
Yeah, it sounds
adapt.
like we're in a race against time to adapt and find new solutions before the situation gets even worse. But amidst all these challenges, are there any signs of hope? Are there any promising initiatives or innovations that are making a difference?
Absolutely. There's a growing awareness of the importance of sustainable infrastructure, and that's leading to some truly innovative approaches to slope stabilization. For instance, there's been a lot of research into using geosynthetic materials. Imagine like a super strong mesh that's embedded within strength and it helps water drain away, which is exactly what we need in those heavy
So it's
rainfall
like a hidden
areas.
support system for the slope.
Mm.
It's amazing what they come up with these days. What else is on the horizon?
Well, there's also some exciting work being done with bioengineering techniques. These combine natural elements like plants with engineered structures.
Hmm.
It's all about working with nature, not against it, to create more resilient and lasting
It sounds
solutions.
like a brilliant blend of cutting-edge technology and ancient wisdom. What about technology's role in monitoring these slopes and detecting problems early on?
Oh, technology is playing a huge role these days. You have sensors and remote sensing technologies that are being used to monitor slopes 24/7. They provide valuable data on things like soil moisture, any movement, and other factors. This allows for early detection of potential issues so we can intervene before they turn into major
So it's like
failures.
having a constant eye on these slopes, gathering information to guide maintenance and prevent disasters. That's pretty incredible. It seems like there's a lot of work being done and a lot of exciting innovation happening. But I have to ask, what can everyday people like us do to help? Is there a role for community involvement in tackling this challenge?
Absolutely. I think awareness is key. When people understand the factors that contribute to slope failures, they can be more vigilant about reporting potential problems to the authorities. Even simple things like reporting cracks, signs of erosion, or unusual water runoff can help trigger timely inspections and
So it's about
interventions.
being informed, being observant, and speaking up if something seems off. It's a shared responsibility, right?
Exactly. And supporting policies and initiatives that promote sustainable infrastructure development is crucial. By advocating for responsible construction practices, environmental protection, and strong maintenance programs, citizens can play a vital role in ensuring that our roads and infrastructure are safe and built to last.
We've certainly covered a lot of ground today, from the science behind slope stability to the very real economic and social impacts of those failures, and the innovative solutions being developed and implemented. It's a complex issue, but it's clear that with the right combination of knowledge, resources, and commitment, it's one we can overcome.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating dive. And what's particularly exciting is the potential for continued innovation in this field. The more we learn about the forces at play, the better we'll be at creating truly sustainable and resilient infrastructure that can stand the test of time and
As we
nature.
wrap up this deep dive, I'm left feeling hopeful and with a renewed appreciation for the intricate interplay between human ingenuity and the raw power of nature. It's a reminder that infrastructure is more than just concrete and steel. It's a lifeline, a connector, and a reflection of our values and priorities. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
I think the key takeaway is that each of us has a role to play in ensuring the safety and sustainability of the infrastructure we all rely on, whether it's through advocating for responsible policies, supporting research and innovation, or simply being more aware of our surroundings. We can all contribute to building a more resilient
So
future.
the next time you're driving down the road, take a moment to appreciate the engineering marvels that keep you moving. And remember that delicate balance that keeps those roads safe and sound. And remember, if you see something, say something. Your observation could be the key to preventing a major problem down the road.
And never stop learning. The more we understand about the world around us, the better equipped we'll be to face the challenges and create a brighter
Well
future.
said. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating deep dive into the world of embankment and slope failures on Nigerian roads. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those wheels turning safely.